Your resume seems embellished, the interviewer said dismissively. I doubt you've actually handled major accounts like these. My chest tightened as 15 years of hard work were brushed aside with a single sentence. The weight of my dwindling bank account pressed down as I sat straighter. Every achievement listed is genuine, I said quietly. The market expansion strategy I developed. Anyone can write numbers on paper. The interviewer cut me off with a thin smile. Without backing from a prestigious firm, these claims are questionable at best. 8 months ago, I was directing projects across 5 countries until new ownership pushed out experienced women for their inner circle. Now, I was on my 73rd interview, facing the same wall of doubt. The interviewer tapped my resume with a pen. This client portfolio seems particularly far-fetched. The side door swung open. A person in an expensive suit walked in, stopped mid-stride, and stared at me. "It's you," they exclaimed with genuine warmth. "The miracle worker who saved us last year. When every consultant said our product line was doomed, your strategy completely turned things around." The interviewer's mouth opened slightly. "That's precisely why I'm here today," the client continued. "We want to triple our investment with your firm. Is she joining your team? Because that would seal the deal immediately." Before I continue this incredible story, I need you to know something. Have you ever been underestimated? Ever had someone look at you and decide your worth before you even spoke? If you felt that burn of injustice, you'll want to stay until the very end, because what happens next changed not just my life, but an entire industry. My name is Aviva Renault. At 42, I had built my career in international market strategy from nothing. Growing up in a small Midwestern town where girls were expected to marry young and stay close to home, I'd defied expectations by working 3 jobs to put myself through business school. My analytical mind, combined with genuine empathy for consumer needs, had become my professional signature. I'd cultivated the ability to see patterns others missed and translate those insights into profitable strategies. But sitting in that interview room at TGR Advisory, none of that seemed to matter to Philomena Oswald, the chief talent officer whose pencil-thin eyebrows had remained raised throughout our entire conversation. After the client, Elias Bowen, CEO of one of North America's fastest-growing consumer goods companies, left the room, Philomena's entire demeanor transformed. Her rigid posture softened. The critical edge in her voice disappeared. "Well, this is certainly unexpected," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Elias is notoriously difficult to impress. Tell me more about how you worked with his company." I took a measured breath. I designed their Southeast Asian market entry strategy last year. Their previous consultants had recommended against expansion, citing cultural barriers. But I identified specific regional opportunities they'd overlooked. Philomena nodded enthusiastically, as if she hadn't spent the previous 20 minutes questioning my capabilities. Fascinating. And the results? 37% growth in their first 2 quarters, outperforming initial projections by double digits. "Impressive," she said, scribbling notes. "We should accelerate your application. In fact, given your experience, we might consider you for our senior director position. The compensation would be quite generous." The whiplash from contempt to courtship gave me emotional vertigo. Just moments ago, she had practically called me a liar. "The position requires someone who commands respect," she continued, oblivious to the irony. "Someone with gravitas." I watched her rewrite our shared reality in real time. The dismissive interviewer was gone. In her place sat an enthusiastic advocate who'd recognized my potential immediately. As she outlined next steps, my mind drifted back to 8 months earlier. I'd been executive strategy director at Crest Innovations when a venture capital firm acquired us. The new CEO, Preston, had called me to his office on a Tuesday morning. "Aviva, your track record is stellar," he'd said while examining his cuticles. "But we're implementing a more aggressive growth model requiring different leadership chemistry." Translation: the boys' club was closing ranks. Within 6 weeks, all 5 female directors were replaced by men from Preston's network. Most had less experience, but the right energy for the new vision. My severance package was generous, designed to prevent lawsuits rather than honor contribution. At first, I'd been confident. With my experience and results, Finding a new position seemed inevitable. But 73 interviews later, I'd encountered countless versions of Philomena, people who couldn't reconcile my achievements with their perception of who should have achieved them. We could have an offer prepared by tomorrow, Philomena was saying now. I'll just need to confer with the executive team, but after Elias's endorsement, it's practically a formality. I looked at her, noting how her earlier contempt had vanished completely. That's quite a shift in perspective, I said carefully. She laughed lightly. Well, Elias is our highest billing client. His opinion carries significant weight. And my extensive experience didn't? Her smile faltered. I hope you understand that we have to be thorough in our vetting process. Many candidates exaggerate their thoughts. You weren't being thorough, I interrupted quietly. You decided I was unqualified the moment I walked in. That's not true, she protested, color rising in her cheeks. I was simply asking challenging questions. You called my achievements far-fetched and questionable. Those weren't questions, they were accusations. Philomena straightened papers that didn't need straightening. Perhaps there was a miscommunication, but what matters now is that we're very interested in bringing you on board. I gathered my portfolio slowly. I appreciate that. When can I expect to hear about next steps? Her relief was palpable. I'll call you personally by tomorrow afternoon. As promised, Philomena called the next day with an offer significantly above the advertised salary range. I requested the weekend to consider it, which she granted enthusiastically. That weekend changed everything. Saturday morning, I sat at my kitchen counter staring at the offer letter. The compensation would solve my immediate financial concerns, but something felt wrong. I thought about all the qualified people, particularly women over 40, who'd been dismissed without an Elias to champion them. My phone chimed with a message from Nishtha Dar, my former colleague from Crest Innovations. We'd been meeting monthly for coffee since the acquisition. Still on for tomorrow? Have news, her text read. The next morning at our usual cafe, Nishtha radiated excitement. At 56, she had an energy that belied her age and wisdom that reflected her 3 decades in business intelligence. I've been consulting with 3 former Crest clients, she revealed. They all asked the same thing. Why isn't there a firm that combines data intelligence with cultural insight? The big firms have the numbers but miss the human element. I nodded, remembering how often our recommendations at Crest had been challenged by executives who couldn't see beyond spreadsheets. So, I've been thinking, Nishtha continued, leaning forward. What if we created that firm? You, me, maybe bring in Yara for her digital expertise. Yara Okonkwo had been our digital transformation lead at Crest, another casualty of the acquisition. You mean start our own company? I asked. Exactly. Between us, we have contacts across 4 continents. My severance is still intact, and I'm guessing yours is too. I pulled out the TGR offer letter and slid it across the table. Nishtha scanned it and whistled. Impressive figure, but your face tells me you're not thrilled. The interviewer spent 20 minutes telling me my experience wasn't credible until their client walked in and recognized me. And now they're desperate to hire you, Nishtha said, understanding immediately. Classic. If I take this job, I'm entering another company where my value is determined by who validates me, not what I've accomplished. Nishtha handed back the letter. So what's your alternative? For the first time in months, energy surged through me. Maybe you just suggested it. Over the next 3 hours, we sketched the outline of what would become Prism's strategies. Our vision: a consultancy specializing in markets the big firms considered challenging, regions they typically approached with Western-centric models that missed crucial cultural nuances. By Monday morning, I had drafted a respectful decline to TGR and scheduled calls with Yara and 2 other former colleagues who'd been sidelined during the Crest acquisition. Philomena's response came within minutes of my email. This is disappointing. Perhaps we can increase the compensation package? Elias specifically asked about you this morning. I replied that my decision wasn't about money, thanked her for her time, and closed my laptop with a finality that felt liberating. The first 6 months of building Prism were the most challenging and rewarding of my career. Nishtha, Yara, and I pooled our severance packages as startup capital. We worked from Nishtha's converted garage, using our industry connections to secure initial meetings. Our first breakthrough came unexpectedly. Damon Reeves, a mid-level manager at a consumer electronics company, had been in one of my workshops years earlier. He reached out after hearing I'd started a new venture. My team has been pushing for Southeast Asian expansion, but our consultants say the markets aren't ready, he explained. I remembered how you approached similar challenges. Would you consider providing an alternative assessment? The project budget was modest, but the opportunity was perfect. We spent 3 weeks developing a comprehensive analysis that identified specific entry points overlooked by traditional metrics. When we presented our findings, the room's energy shifted from skepticism to excitement. 2 vice presidents who hadn't been scheduled to attend showed up midway through. This is exactly what we've been trying to articulate, one said afterward. You've quantified the opportunity while addressing the cultural complexities. That single project led to 3 referrals, each slightly larger than the last. By month 4, we had hired 2 analysts and moved into a small office space. Then came the industry conference that would change everything. The annual Global Market Summit was the premier gathering for our industry. Normally, a startup like Prism wouldn't have warranted attention, but Yara had previously chaired the technology panel and leveraged that connection to secure us a small presentation slot on the secondary stage. Our topic, Invisible Markets, Identifying Overlooked Growth Opportunities, wasn't designed to be provocative. We simply presented case studies showing how traditional assessment models systematically undervalued certain regions and demographics. What we didn't know was that Elias Bowen would be in our audience. When the Q&A began, Elias stood up. Your methodology challenges everything the major firms have been telling my board. How confident are you in these projections? I recognized him immediately, but maintained my professional composure. Our models have consistently outperformed traditional projections by 23 to 41% in these markets. We have the data to support every assertion we've made today. You certainly do, he said with a smile. Your strategy transformed our business last year. I'm curious why you're not with TGR now. I specifically recommended you to them. The room grew quiet. TGR was one of the conference's major sponsors, with their CEO scheduled to deliver the next day's keynote. I decided to pursue a different opportunity, I replied diplomatically. Elias nodded thoughtfully. Well, their loss is apparently significant. My team would like to hear more about your current work. Are you taking new clients? Selectively, I answered. The buzz began immediately after our session. Attendees who had skipped our presentation requested private meetings. Industry reporters who had been focused on the major firms suddenly wanted Prism's perspective. But the most significant moment came that evening at the networking reception. I was speaking with a potential client when I noticed Philomena Oswald watching me from across the room. Beside her stood TGR's CEO, Gerard Walsh, his expression tense as Elias approached me with purpose. Aviva, Elias called, loud enough for nearby conversations to pause. I've spoken with our board. We want to transition our entire APAC strategy work to Prism. Philomena's face drained of color. That's a substantial portfolio, I said, aware of the attention we were attracting. Worth every penny based on your previous results, Elias replied. Besides, we've been dissatisfied with our current consultant's limited vision. I felt Philomena's stare intensify as she whispered urgently to Gerard. We'd be honored to discuss the opportunity, I said professionally. Excellent. And fair warning. I've already mentioned your firm to several colleagues from other companies. Expect some calls. As Elias walked away, Gerard and Philomena immediately intercepted him. Their conversation appeared tense, with Elias shaking his head repeatedly. Later that evening, Gerard approached me at the bar. Aviva, isn't it? Gerard Walsh, CEO of TGR. I understand there was some confusion during your interview process with us. No confusion, I replied evenly. Your talent officer made her assessment quite clear until Elias changed her mind. Gerard winced slightly. Sometimes our processes don't properly identify exceptional talent. I'd like to personally apologize and explore whether there might still be a fit between your expertise and our organization. I met his gaze directly. That's kind of you, but Prism is my focus now. Perhaps a strategic partnership then? Your boutique approach combined with our global resources could be powerful. Before I could respond, Nishtha appeared at my side. Sorry to interrupt, but our next appointment has arrived. No such appointment existed, but her timing was perfect. Of course, I said, turning back to Gerard. It was nice meeting you. The conference marked a turning point for Prism. Within 3 months, we had secured contracts with 7 major clients, including Elias's company. Our team grew to 17 people, each hired not just for their technical skills, but for their diverse perspectives and experiences. If you're enjoying this story so far, I want you to hit that like button right now. Subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell, because we share these real-life business revenge stories weekly. Stories about underestimated professionals who completely transform industries after being dismissed. Your support helps us bring more of these authentic experiences to light. Now, let me tell you what happened next, because the real revenge was just beginning. Our rapid growth necessitated a larger workspace. We found a light-filled office in a converted warehouse district. Nothing extravagant, but with room to expand. I insisted our conference room have glass walls facing the main work area. Transparency would be literal at Prism, not just a buzzword on a mission statement. 6 months after the conference, our client roster had tripled. We'd expanded to 28 team members, each bringing unique perspectives shaped by diverse experiences. When most firms sought graduates from the same 5 universities, we discovered brilliant minds from schools no one in our industry recruited from. Vera, our research director, who'd been rejected by 12 major firms despite her groundbreaking market prediction models, revamped our entire analytical framework. Milo, a 60-year-old former teacher who'd gotten his business degree after 30 years in education, brought psychological insights that transformed our client communications strategy. What made our approach revolutionary wasn't just our diverse hiring, it was our methodology. Traditional firms filtered all market data through established Western economic models. We inverted the process, examining markets through local cultural contexts first, then applying economic analysis. The results consistently outperformed industry standards by staggering margins. One Tuesday morning, 13 months after founding Prism, Yara burst into my office, waving her tablet. "You need to see this," she said, placing it before me. The industry newsletter headline read, "TGR launches new division, Horizon Markets." The article detailed how TGR was creating a specialized unit focused on undervalued international markets with unique cultural considerations, nearly identical language to Prism's marketing materials. "They're copying our entire model," Yara said, crossing her arms. I skimmed the article, and guess who's heading the division? Who? Philomena Oswald. Yara's eyes widened. "The same woman who said your experience wasn't credible?" "The very same." Later that day, Nishtha discovered something even more concerning. TGR had scheduled meetings with 3 of our biggest clients, offering similar services at significantly reduced rates. "They're undercutting us by 30%, Nishtha reported. "They can afford to operate at a loss to capture market share." I leaned back in my chair, considering our options. They can copy our approach and undercut our prices, but they can't replicate our team or thinking. Let's accelerate development of the assessment framework. The framework Nishtha and I had been developing was our most innovative creation yet, a talent assessment model that identified overlooked potential in job candidates by evaluating skills through scenario-based challenges rather than traditional credentials. "It's still in beta," Nishtha cautioned. "Then we'll refine it faster. This isn't just about business anymore. It's about proving our entire philosophy works." Over the next 3 weeks, we worked relentlessly to perfect the framework. When we finally tested it with a client's hiring team, the results were beyond even our expectations. The system identified exceptional candidates who had been previously filtered out by conventional screening methods. Our client, the innovation director at a technology company, was astonished. These candidates would never have made it past our initial screening. Their backgrounds don't fit our usual pattern. "That's precisely the point," I explained. "Excellence doesn't follow a single pattern." Word spread quickly. While TGR focused on copying our market analysis approach, we shifted the conversation entirely. Instead of just helping companies find overlooked markets, we now help them find overlooked talent to develop those markets. 2 months later, we received an unexpected email from Darian Winters, TGR's Director of Client Services, requesting a meeting. Curious about their intentions, I agreed. Darian arrived precisely on time, impeccably dressed and visibly uncomfortable. After brief pleasantries, he got straight to the point. TGR would like to discuss the possibility of acquiring Prism strategies, he said. Our board believes there could be significant synergies between our organizations. I kept my expression neutral despite my surprise. That's an interesting proposition. May I ask what prompted this interest? Your growth has been remarkable, he replied carefully. Your methodologies, particularly your talent assessment framework, have generated considerable attention in the industry. The same methodologies TGR is currently attempting to duplicate? He shifted in his seat. There may have been some parallel development, but our leadership recognizes that your team has a unique approach that would be valuable to our organization. I see. And who proposed this acquisition? It was a board-level decision, he said, avoiding my gaze. Gerard Walsh is personally interested in discussing terms with you. I nodded slowly. Please tell Gerard I'm open to a conversation. However, I'd like the initial meeting to include whoever will be overseeing integration, should an acquisition move forward. That would be Philomena Oswald, Darian said. She's now our Executive Vice President of Strategy and Integration. I smiled. Perfect. Please set up the meeting at your earliest convenience. After Darian left, Yara and Nishtha peppered me with questions. Are you actually considering selling to them? Yara asked incredulously. I'm considering hearing what they have to say, I replied. Nishtha studied my expression. You have something in mind. Let's just say I'm curious about how Philomena will approach this meeting. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at TGR's headquarters. I arrived 15 minutes early, accompanied by Nishtha and our recently hired legal counsel, Imani. The receptionist guided us to a large conference room, where Gerard Walsh greeted us warmly, while Philomena stood slightly behind him, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Aviva, wonderful to meet again, Gerard said. Thank you for considering our proposal. Thank you for your interest in Prism, I replied. I believe you know Nishtha Dar, my co-founder and chief intelligence officer, and this is Imani Okeke, our general counsel. After introductions, we settled around the table. I noticed Philomena had positioned herself directly across from me. Before we begin, I said, I'd like to understand TGR's vision for Prism post-acquisition, specifically how you see our methodologies and team integrating with your existing structure. Gerard nodded to Philomena, who straightened her posture before speaking. We envision Prism becoming our innovation hub, she said smoothly. Your methodologies would be scaled across our global operations, while your core team would lead knowledge transfer to our existing departments. And our talent assessment framework, the one that identifies overlooked candidates? A fascinating initiative, Philomena replied, though we'd need to align it with our established recruitment parameters to ensure quality consistency. I noted how carefully she avoided acknowledging the framework's purpose, to challenge those very established parameters. Could you elaborate on what you mean by quality consistency? I asked. She smiled tightly. TGR has built its reputation on a certain caliber of professional. While we appreciate fresh perspectives, we must maintain the standards our clients expect. Interesting, I said. And who would oversee this alignment process? My division would handle integration. Philomena replied. We'd work closely with your team during transition, though ultimately all hiring decisions would follow TGR's established protocols. Gerard jumped in. We're prepared to make a very generous offer, Aviva. Your team would receive significant retention bonuses, and you personally would have a senior leadership position. Reporting to? I asked. Philomena would be your direct supervisor, Gerard said. As EVP of Strategy and Integration, she oversees all specialized divisions. I nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for clarifying. Before discussing numbers, I'd like to share something with you. I opened my laptop and turned it toward them. This is a time-lapse visualization of market performance for clients who've implemented our recommendations over the past 18 months compared to industry averages. The animation showed dramatic outperformance across multiple sectors and regions. Both Gerard and Philomena leaned forward, their expressions revealing genuine surprise at the magnitude of the differences. These results aren't just marginally better, I continued. They represent fundamental shifts in how these companies approach market development. Impressive, Gerard murmured. Now, I'd like to show you something else. I switched to a different visualization. This represents the demographic and experiential diversity of teams that achieved these results compared to industry norms. The contrast was striking. Prism's methodology had assembled teams that looked nothing like the homogeneous groups typically found in consulting firms. Our success isn't despite our different approach to talent. It's because of it. I explained. We don't succeed by making everyone fit the same mold. We succeed by finding people whose unique perspectives reveal opportunities others miss. Philomena's expression tightened. While diversity initiatives are certainly important, TGR has specific standards that ensure client confidence. Are those the same standards that led you to dismiss my experience as far-fetched during our interview? I asked quietly. The room went silent. Gerard glanced at Philomena with raised eyebrows. I think there's been a misunderstanding about that interaction, Philomena said carefully. There's no misunderstanding, I replied. You decided my achievements weren't credible until a client validated them. And now you want to apply those same flawed judgments to my entire team. Gerard cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the financial aspects of the potential acquisition. Actually, I said, I have a counter-proposal. I opened a folder and slid documents across the table. These are our terms for considering an acquisition. Gerard scanned the first page, his eyebrows rising. This is unconventional. So is our company? I replied. Philomena frowned as she read. This stipulates that Prism would operate as an independent division with complete autonomy over hiring and methodology. Correct, I said. And this section, Gerard continued, requires the creation of a new department dedicated to inclusive hiring practices, with authority to review and override standard recruitment processes. Also correct. Philomena's voice turned cold. This effectively dismantles our entire talent acquisition approach. It transforms it, I corrected, based on proven results. And you would personally oversee this department? Gerard asked, reaching the final page. Yes, with full executive authority and direct board reporting. Philomena placed the document down carefully. This is completely unacceptable. You're essentially demanding control over how TGR hires across the entire organization. I'm proposing a system that identifies excellence wherever it exists, I replied calmly, something your current approach consistently fails to do. Gerard looked troubled. Aviva, while your results are impressive, this goes far beyond a standard acquisition. You approached us because our different perspective creates exceptional value, I said. If you want that value, you need to embrace what makes it possible. We need to discuss this internally, Gerard said, gathering the papers. Of course, I replied. We'll await your response. 3 days later, Darian called to request another meeting. This time, Gerard arrived alone. Your conditions have created quite a stir, he said after we settled in my office. Philomena was strongly opposed. I'm not surprised. But our board reviewed your performance data, he continued. The results are undeniable. They've authorized me to continue negotiations with some modifications to your terms. He presented a counter-proposal that preserved most of my core requirements but reduced the scope of the talent department's authority and extended the implementation timeline. This represents significant change for TGR, Gerard explained. The board needs reassurance that these new approaches will be implemented responsibly. And Philomena's position on this? I asked. Gerard hesitated. She's expressed reservations but will support the board's decision. Over the next 2 weeks, we negotiated final terms. The agreement maintained my requirement for an independent, inclusive talent department with significant authority. The implementation timeline was extended, but with clear benchmarks to ensure progress. 1 month later, we announced the acquisition. The industry press covered it extensively, particularly the unconventional structure that preserved Prism's autonomy while transforming TGR's approach to talent. On my first official day at TGR headquarters, I arrived early to prepare for the all-hands meeting where Gerard would introduce me and announce the new talent initiative. As I arranged my presentation materials, Philomena entered the room. "Congratulations on your new position," she said coolly. "Thank you," I replied. "I'm looking forward to working together." She gave a thin smile. "I want to be clear about something. I may have been wrong about you specifically, but TGR's standards exist for good reasons. Not everyone who claims exceptional abilities actually possesses them." "I agree completely," I said. "That's why my department will focus on evidence-based assessment rather than assumptions. Just remember that client confidence depends on maintaining certain professional expectations." "Like dismissing candidates based on first impressions?" I asked. Her expression hardened. "I've been in this industry for 20 years. My judgment of talent has built this company's reputation." "Then you'll appreciate that good systems improve with new data," I replied. "The data shows your judgment has missed extraordinary talent. My job is to fix that gap. We'll see how the board feels after 6 months of your experiments." "They're not experiments," I corrected her. "They're proven methodologies. But you're right about one thing. The results will speak for themselves." As executives and staff filled the auditorium an hour later, I stood beside Gerard at the side of the stage. Philomena sat in the front row, her expression carefully neutral. Gerard's introduction was brief but enthusiastic. When I took the podium, I surveyed the room of nearly 300 employees, noting their varying expressions from curiosity to skepticism. "Many of you are wondering why TGR acquired Prism," I began, "and why a company our size would demand such unconventional terms. The answer is simple: because excellence doesn't always look like what we expect." I advanced to my first slide, showing the same performance data I'd shared with Gerard and Philomena. These results weren't achieved by following traditional methods. They came from questioning assumptions about which markets matter, which strategies work, and most importantly, which people have valuable insights. I clicked to the next slide, showing side-by-side comparisons of traditional recruitment profiles versus the diverse backgrounds of Prism's top performers. The talent acquisition initiative I'll be leading isn't about lowering standards. It's about recognizing that we've been measuring the wrong things. We've confused credentials with capability, pedigree with potential. From the front row, Philomena watched with a tight expression. In the coming months, every hiring manager will learn new assessment techniques that identify excellence in unexpected places. Every rejection will require specific, evidence-based documentation explaining why the candidate couldn't perform the actual job functions. I paused, making eye contact with various people throughout the room. Some of you may be uncomfortable with this change. That's natural. But I'm not here to replace TGR's culture with Prism's. I'm here to help this company recognize talent it's been programmed to overlook, talent that will drive unprecedented growth. As the presentation concluded and applause filled the room, I noticed Philomena slip out a side door. Our confrontation was far from over, but the transformation had officially begun. The following weeks brought expected resistance. Several senior managers complained that the new assessment requirements were burdensome and unnecessary. Philomena quietly supported their objections in management meetings. But everything changed 6 weeks later when our first cohort of new hires, all selected through the Inclusive Talent Framework, completed their initial projects. Their results outperformed traditional hires by measurable margins across every department. At the quarterly board meeting, I presented these outcomes alongside projections for continued improvement. The data was unambiguous. Identifying overlooked talent wasn't just morally right. It created competitive advantage. After my presentation, one board member turned to Philomena. "Why haven't we been hiring this way all along?" She had no answer. 3 months after that, TGR's client satisfaction scores reached their highest levels in company history. Our new approach to talent had transformed not just who we hired, but how we served clients. The most satisfying moment came 1 year after the acquisition. I was working late when Philomena appeared in my office doorway. Do you have a minute? She asked, her usual confidence noticeably absent. Of course, I replied, gesturing to a chair. She sat down carefully. The Eastern Europe expansion project. The team you assembled, they identified opportunities no one else saw. They did excellent work. I agreed. One of the analysts, Teresa. I rejected her application twice before your system flagged her potential. Philomena paused. She's brilliant. Yes, she is. Philomena looked down at her hands. I've been reviewing all the candidates I rejected over the past 5 years who were later hired through your department. The pattern is disturbing. In what way? I consistently dismissed people who didn't fit a certain profile, regardless of their capabilities. She met my eyes directly, including you. I waited, letting her continue. I need to ask you something, she said. When you proposed this acquisition, was it always about changing how we identify talent? Was that your actual goal? I considered my answer carefully. When you dismissed my experience that day, you weren't just rejecting me. You were reinforcing a system that consistently overlooks certain kinds of excellence. My goal wasn't to become your boss or prove you wrong. It was to ensure that system couldn't keep hurting people with valuable contributions to make. Philomena nodded slowly. I've requested a transfer to lead our Asia-Pacific division, she said. Before I go, I wanted you to know that I understand now what you were trying to accomplish. As she stood to leave, I said, Philomena? She turned. Excellence comes in many forms, including the ability to recognize when our judgment needs recalibration. A small smile touched her lips. Perhaps that's the most important skill of all. 2 years after founding Prism, what began as my personal quest for validation had transformed an entire industry. TGR's inclusive talent approach became the new standard, with competitors scrambling to replicate our results. The consulting world, long dominated by narrow definitions of excellence, was opening to voices and perspectives previously excluded. My revenge wasn't in humiliating Philomena or taking her position. It was in systematically dismantling the arbitrary barriers that let mediocre gatekeepers decide who deserves opportunity, ensuring they could never again dismiss someone like me. Have you ever been underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire others facing similar challenges. And if you found value in this journey of transformation against all odds, please hit that like button and subscribe. Every week we bring you real stories of professional redemption that prove success is the best revenge. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode, and let us know what industry's gatekeepers need to be challenged next.